Such a sophisticated system and microphones. It's because this is the type of content that we want to keep reusing over and over again. But I would like to first welcome you all who are both in the room and all those who are also online. My name is Dr. Rhotsofetsi Chikane, and I'm the director of the Tayarisha Center for Digital Governance. And today we're welcoming you to be part of like a very interesting launch. It is our second iteration of our working paper series, volume 2. We hope that we have volume 3 and volume 4 as we go along. And the entire exercise behind, the entire thought process behind this working paper series is about really trying to get voices on the continent talking about AI and digital governance. Many years ago, myself, Geshi, and a former colleague of ours, Dr. Hafta Ndenge, were sitting around and thinking, you know, we should have like a book on digital governance. And if we just put out the call, we're going to get thousands of people submitting papers and wanting to be published. And what we found out is that that's not necessarily the case. That in fact, the space is actually much sparser than you would think it is. These much fewer voices who are actively participating outside of your celebrity academics here and there, that we wanted to give an opportunity for not just senior lecturers and senior professors, but also early career researchers to really influence the dialogue and the discourse around AI and digital governance. And out of that came our first volume, which came out 2 years ago at this point. And the logic behind these volumes, Professor Karuru Sabina will explain just now, is really about how do we get this discourse out there in a manner that doesn't require any form of gatekeeping, that it must go through a journal, that it must go through X, Y, Z, and then we help facilitate these voices getting out in the broader public. But we're going to talk about that a bit later. For most of you, you may not have heard of the Tayarisha Center for Digital Governance. So we started off as an initial conversation in 2019 around the lack of research taking place around data and digital governance in South Africa and on Africa in particular within the School of Governance. We were then given the task of create a working group. And then we quickly realized those who had to create the working group did not have the skill set to run a center in any particular way. And because of that, we brought in Professor Karuru Sabina to lead us over the last 5 years, who is more than capable to lead the center. And as time has gone on, we've gone from a small working group into a group of academics who are trying to exist on this campus, into a group of academics in which we proved that the center can exist. And we're now moving into the next stage in which we are a center at the university that fundamentally drives the conversation around digital governance, not just in South Africa, but on the continent as a whole. As a center, we have 5 priority research areas. That's AI and digital governance. Our second area is around digital sovereignty and geopolitics of technology. Both these areas are what we describe as our catch-all research areas, in which we try and deal with the technical aspects of digital transformation, digital governance, as well as the political economy questions around these topics as well. We also have 3 more niche research areas, and that would be digital public infrastructure, as well as digital public finance, and the last one being anticipatory governance. And all five of these research areas essentially set our research agenda and informs the projects that we're doing, whether it is our partnership with the IDRC, whether it is our partnership with two interesting stakeholders. If you think this is the only piece of research that we're doing, please be on the lookout. We're doing very fascinating projects about what does the future of local government look like over the next 25 years in a prospective report that we're doing in partnership with the South African Cities Network, right? Utilizing anticipatory governance techniques, utilizing strategic foresight to really imagine what does local government have to do to advance going forward. We're also doing a fascinating project with one of our SETAs, MERSETA, who function in manufacturing and engineering. And I forget what the R stands for now, manufacturing, engineering, but they function in that sector of our economy. And we're helping them think through how do you govern in an age of uncertainty, right? Where your decisions are not straightforward, where the technology today is the worst it will ever be, if everyone's ever heard that term before. And how do you govern in that situation? And we're working with them from all the way in the executive down to their chambers to really kickstart the research agenda for MERSETA. Alongside that, we also have exciting programs. Many of you might be students, and hopefully in the next 2 years, you will see that we'll be hopefully launching our joint degree program on a Masters of Digital Governance and Practice with two stakeholders who we can't probably say just as yet, and our Masters in Digital Governance Futures as well as our joint PhD in digital governance that we hope to launch in the next couple of years. So there's a lot in store for us. There's a lot of work we want to do. There's many things that I could also tell you about within Tayarisha. But for now, I want to say thank you so much for coming. For those who are online, in the room, we hope to have an engaging conversation. I had to pre-warn those who are in the room that today is not going to be an ordinary type of discussion in which people rock up and we talk for ages and you listen to people and then we do Q&A at the end. We've decided to actively include those who are in the room in what we call a fishbowl discussion, which we will reveal what that looks like a bit later on in the discussion. So at this point, I want to say welcome. The bathrooms for those who are in the room are towards the back. The exits are also towards the back. So if you need to get out, just go towards the back. But that being said, I would like to welcome one of the partners who's made this working paper series possible. From the IDRC, I would like to welcome Gillian, who I think you are online. Gillian, if you can just give us a shout, if you can hear us. There you are.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Gillian Dowie from the IDRC. Without the IDRC, a lot of the work that we would have been trying to do with this working paper series just wouldn't be possible. And often these are the partners that really help elevate the discourse on the African continent, within South Africa in particular, and in particular within our center. So we're very, very grateful, and I'll give it to you, Gillian. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everybody who's in person. I wish I could be there. Of course, I can't see the room, but it sounds like a really great group of people, a lot of students. This is really exciting, and hopefully I'll be able to listen on the fishbowl later as well. It is a real pleasure to join you for the launch of this round or this volume, let's say, of the Tayarisha Working Paper series. I want to begin by congratulating the whole team, the whole Tayarisha team, and all of the contributing authors. This is when discussions right now about AI are accelerating across the world, of course, and this series provides something that's both urgently needed and still somehow too rare. Rigorous, context-specific research on AI and digital governance from Africa and from the broader global South. The series, was designed precisely to generate and circulate evidence that can help inform policy debates at a moment when countries are establishing, many of the foundational rules that's actually going to shape the digital future. So this is really the moment to be getting in there, thinking about these issues, publishing, getting into the ears of policymakers and decision makers, thinking about the future. So it's really nice to hear about these master's programs coming up that are going to be working on these kinds of things. Globally, there's this really a big growing recognition that AI is not simply a technological issue. It raises questions about power, about rights, accountability, inclusion, economic transformation, public trust. Decisions are being made today about data governance, transparency, public sector use of AI, competition, labor markets, digital rights, a whole range of issues that are going to influence development trajectories for years to come. But one of the challenges that we face is that we're often missing evidence that reflects these realities, the institutions, the priorities, the aspirations of countries across the global south and across Africa, across the region. At AI for D, or AI for Development, a program jointly supported by Canada's IDRC and the UK's FCDO, and of course I come from Canada's IDRC, we view governance as a central pillar of building a responsible AI ecosystem. Our approach starts from the premise that responsible AI ecosystems don't emerge from technology alone. They require strong research capacity, effective and inclusive governance frameworks, locally rooted innovation ecosystems that are all kind of working together. Responsible AI is AI that's, of course, inclusive, rights respecting, safe, accountable, sustainable, and responsive to local needs and priorities. And this comes out, of course, also of healthy digital ecosystems, digital governance policies, access, etc. Within our own governance portfolio of work within AI for D, we're interested in a bunch of sort of interconnected dimensions. The first is, of course, the governance of AI, the rules, standards, and institutions that shape AI and digital systems. Governing with AI, so how governments use AI in decision making in public services, and right now, maybe more realistically, it's how they're using digitalization in public services and transferring into AI. And then AI in governance, I guess we can call it, the broader ways that AI is transforming governance processes, institutions, relationships between states and citizens, for example, all of these different dynamics. And importantly, we see governance not as a constraint on innovation necessarily, but as an enabler of innovation, but that is trusted, inclusive, and capable of delivering public value and public good. And this is why we're so happy to support this edition of the Working Paper series. I think research plays a unique role in this vision. Good governance requires evidence. Policymakers need more than principles. They need data, analysis, case studies, practical insights that are context relevant about what is working, where risks are emerging, and how different policy choices are shaping outcomes. Research helps us to move beyond simple narratives of either sort of techno optimism, techno pessimism. It allows us to ask harder questions about who benefits from AI, who's excluded, how power and benefit is distributed, and what institutional arrangements may be the most likely to support equitable and sustainable outcomes. And this is especially important, of course, in a rapidly evolving area where policy decisions are often being made faster than evidence is being generated or made based on sort of templates from countries that don't necessarily reflect the reality of a specific context. And that is why this working paper series is so valuable. The papers bring together diverse perspectives from scholars and practitioners working across different contexts. They contribute original evidence, they raise new questions, they deepen our understanding of the political and institutional and the social dimensions of AI governance and digital governance. And beyond the individual papers themselves, I think the series really helps to strengthen, I think it's probably reflected in the room, the broader community of researchers and policymakers and civil society actors, institutions, working to ensure that AI is informed by local realities rather than these kind of imported assumptions. This is all fundamentally about strengthening global South leadership and shaping the future of AI. But let me conclude by returning to why this initiative really matters. The future of AI governance will not only be shaped through kind of these summits that are happening all over the world, technical standards, regulatory frameworks. It'll also be shaped through the production of knowledge, through research that generates evidence, challenges assumptions, and expands the range of voices that are actually participating in these debates. This working paper series, I think, is an important contribution to that effort. So, on behalf of AI4D and on behalf of IDRC, congratulations again to the authors, the editors, reviewers, the entire Tayarisha team. We're really proud to support this work and look forward to the discussions for the rest of today and then ongoing, the collaborations, and of course, the policy influence that will ultimately emerge from all of this. So, thank you very much.
In ideas and assumptions and really actively conducting research that challenges the dogmas, that challenges the hegemonic belief systems around how AI systems should function, how they should be governed, how we work alongside them. We are currently doing an interesting little exercise with our parliamentarians who are fantastic individuals, who run into this trap of realizing that they don't know how to govern alongside AI. And they're trying to figure this out. And hopefully next week we'll be helping them out with that as well. So it is really important questions. You will notice when you go onto the working paper series, and we'll help you navigate to that page, that a lot of our writers are scattered across the global south. So this is not just South Africans writing about South Africa in particular. We've got authors as far flung as India, authors across West Africa, East Africa, who are all talking about the different impacts, the different responses that their research has on these questions that we've been debating for many years at this point. So I would really encourage many of you to go through the working papers as much as possible, and for you to hear more about these working papers. I'd like to welcome one of our co-editors on this book, if not our lead editor. I'm not sure she would want this title, but Professor Geshi Sabina Guru.
I was shy to sit here. I speak now?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, those in the room and those online. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I was clapping the loudest after Gillian spoke, because maybe one of the things I should mention is, as Rosafete has said, this is the second in the working paper series. And when we began this journey, we thought, as we aspired to doing several of these. So when you call it volume 1, normally it means you're expecting to do additional volumes. And times became a bit tough. And for those of you who attended our previous launch, you'd have seen that the Hans Seidel Foundation was our lead partner at that stage. And many things happened in the world that affected many countries, including Germany, and their funding priorities shifted. And what was really great, and I think that's the power of partnerships as well, is we were already doing other work with IDRC. And it was really a relief and a great pleasure when a partner is willing to pivot and say, okay, we were not funding you for that, but if that's what you need, then let's talk about it. And so IDRC, I think, came into this space with us. We've journeyed with them on this. They've been really supportive. But otherwise, we risked doing what many initiatives do in spaces like this, just to collapse when the funding stops. We've been really glad to have partnerships that are a bit deeper than that and that do allow some continuity. We themed our first volume, which I think Rosafete has alluded to, really a bit like a fishing expedition, just to see who was out there, because we thought there were so many people. And so it's really just looking at how people are thinking about the issues of digital governance, and we spread it very wide. We invited, obviously, rigorous perspectives, but that could come in many directions. We were very open-ended. In this second volume, we were a bit more specific, still obviously looking for a global South perspective and an African perspective in particular, but we brought it a bit closer to questions of AI and digital governance and management, in the sense that we were trying to get to what are specific understandings of how our governance systems are engaging with the technology. I like IDRC's framing of it, with, and in. That's helpful as well. But also, yes, are there policy messages? Are there messages about how we ought to be doing it or could be doing it differently in our context that comes out of an understanding of our context? So one of the messages, I think, if you get a chance to engage with these papers, that does in fact already begin coming out, is that our conditions of constraint, of data poverty, of perhaps regulatory frameworks that aren't fit for purpose, and all of that are not just obstacles to us doing better governance. Yeah. They are the conditions within which we are governing in the sense of AI. And that's a very important message for us to understand. Otherwise, we think we are fixing that so that we can then deal with AI. Governance, there's no AI governance and governance. Right now, governance is governance. If you're not governing in terms of AI, then you're really missing something quite important. And those conditions within which you're doing it become important to acknowledge. So this volume, I think, was inviting that perspective. We're at a university, and I think, as IDRC has indicated, there is a degree of evidence and rigor that we want, and therefore the authorship has tended, of course, therefore, to be largely academic. But you'll see from the titles, from the papers, if you read them, that they do go beyond that. There is a broader concern with civil society perspectives, with practice perspectives, with more than theory perspectives as well. So I think that's another important thing to point out, is that I think there's an acknowledgement that this isn't just about government. and a conversation within government or between government and industry. It is a societal conversation that has to be had, and the work hopefully begins to reflect that. It also goes beyond being hyper theoretical, I think, around some of this stuff. You might find some strange things like anarchy and you may not expect to find in a digital series. But I think that's us saying, well, theory matters. I think many of us are sort of critical realists in this sense. But obviously we want that theory applied to the realities of where we are in our various contexts and countries. And so it's been really great to have that. I think there was another one that fell off that was around a feminist perspective from a fairly complicated part of the continent. And so we have very much invited that kind of work as well. So maybe I'll pause there. There's a lot we can talk about regarding, maybe I'll mention one more thing. One of the things we were able to do early on in the process, again with the support of IDRC, was to take a subset of the papers to the IceGov conference last year in Nigeria, which was really great because that's the global community of people studying issues of e-governance and digital transformation. And we put together a panel with 3 of the authors in the volume, and it was a headline, Beyond Digital Consumption and Extraction. And the idea there was to have a conversation based on a paper that's about the economics of AI, a paper in the series that's about data poverty, and one that's about the way we think about these issues. And to really have a conversation of, is Africa stuck yet again with yet another resource, which is a much more complicated resource, to be in this position of either just being a source of data, so extraction, and then being the ones who buy back technology. Are we relegated to that in an AI world? And that's, I think, an important conversation we're able to bring there. I would not say it was well accepted, and that would be a good conversation to have, because I was really surprised at how resistant Africans are to being more proactive. I think from an innovation perspective, we're very much still in a space where many scholars, and I hesitate to say, but I suspect many people in governance still think we are playing a game of catch up and that that's okay.
Yeah.
And so I was surprised at the resistance. I mean, so this is a large academic forum, and it wasn't the international people resisting, it was the African people resisting. And I thought that was really interesting. So maybe that's one of the conversations we can have today. But I just wanted to mention that that kind of public conversation pre-launch did happen, and I think was useful just to test the ideas out there.
Yeah. I mean, I was awfully surprised as we were going through the papers and kind of editing them and reading them over. You got to get a better sense of all these different arguments. And one of the throughput lines, which is why the discussion at IceGov would have intrigued me a lot, is almost every paper had this general understanding of there's something about sovereignty that must take place. And the sovereignty wasn't just, we must just own it. Yeah, and we must just have power. But it was a sense of, one of the papers, the sense of if you don't do it in certain instances, and there's a paper here that really goes into detail about it, people will use it against you to strip you of your basic human dignity at points. And then goes through an extensive exercise of tracing how the misuse of this, if you don't own it, if you don't ask the right questions, how a state can utilize this technology in some of the worst ways. There's a paper that really questions this idea around what is human rights in this day and age as well. What does it mean for human rights? So these topics are really not just about, I mean, it's one thing to do research. Everyone kind of wants to know, I was about to get very technical about something. Let me not do that. But everyone wants to kind of know, how does an LLM function? Well, how could it even affect me in any particular way? Why do I need to know whether this data is stored in a data lake or otherwise? Like, why does this matter? Those questions are deeply important in the way that we think about society going forward. And some of these papers really touch on these topics. And I found that particularly fascinating when I was going through the papers. I should say we also have 2 other editors who are unable to join us today. That's Professor T.K. Boer and then Professor Ginio Gagliardori, who's had to go off to Oxford now, who's also the Saatchi Chair for Digital Humanities at WITS. And I would have loved to hear their inputs, but they send their well wishes. But Geshe, if you could also tell us, actually, before I do that, I do want to say that when we do these working paper series, the idea is to eventually get them published as well. So with the first working paper series that came out about 2 years ago, it's been a bit of an exercise back and forth but we're now in the process of actually publishing that as one of Tayarisha's first books, if I'm not mistaken, at some point early next year. So please be on the lookout for that. So we are trying to create spaces for people to move through this journey, to test out ideas, but then also give you a publication journey as well and get you to that stage. And having said that, Keshe, would you like to tell us what the future of this working paper series will be?
Right. Okay. So, as you've just heard, it takes a long time to do a book, which is a little bit the opposite of what's happening in the space we're writing about, right? Like, who wants to read a book 5 years later about what AI did in 2021, right? I mean, just in that time, some things are unrecognizable. I mean, fortunately, the things we're writing about, though, aren't. So I think, obviously, this is academic work. So the issue is less about writing about the hype of who owns what now, or what does the latest tool do. It's some of the more fundamental work, but still, it's a long time to wait 5 years for a book. So what the working papers have been for us, in addition to being the fishing expedition to surface whoever has interesting perspectives, has been about getting the work out faster. And in fact, speed, in some ways, I would say, is part of what Tayarisha has been looking at and continues to look at, even in terms of teaching, and maybe you'll say something about that later, because, I mean, retrospect, I can tell you how long it takes to set up a course or a degree program. So again, we'll be probably starting the AI degrees when AI is over. Something else. So it takes a really long time to do things in academia. And that sort of defies the moment we're in, where there's, I wouldn't say there's a need for speed, but there's a pressure. There's a pressure to provide the knowledge faster, to speak to the issue. I don't know how many calls you get asking you to be on the video about this, that, or the other. Today, it's which jobs are we losing? Tomorrow, it's, you know, what's Grok doing? I mean, everybody is concerned with the issue du jour. And because it maybe is a space that seems quite mysterious to many of us, the hope is that, okay, maybe the academics can tell us. I don't know how often we can answer these questions. Or when people go to who? To industry, the very people who are doing the thing you're wondering about, you know, and they become the informants and the advisors on it, and that's a bit dodgy. And then if you look to the state, well, they're waiting for the universities to tell them. Yes. So you end up in this kind of weird cycle of not knowing and not being able to make sense of what's happening. So the working papers were the idea of getting to that faster. So how do we pick an issue that's not too hype, but is at least speaking to the moment, get the call out quickly, get the responses quickly. And within a year, we've been able more or less to get papers out. And that in our space is quite quick. Also to get the conversations going. So this is the launch, and hopefully this will just be the beginning of a series of conversations that will now be held around these papers, both on social media. And we have a media team. I see Stanley is here, and I guess Earl is out there somewhere. So our partners at Digital African have been a very important part of saying that this work is also about the conversation. So it's not just about generating a one-way academic speak kind of thing, but it's also about inviting that response from various publics and stakeholders to say, okay, so what is this work telling us? So that the digital aspect has been quite important. So getting the papers out quickly, getting the rigor in. So you heard that there are 4 editors just for this set of papers, and it's kept us busy. So it is heavy work. Again, taking the perspective from an editorial perspective, not of editing out ideas that are difficult, but just editing for a tolerable level of quality. And that's been important, because the other thing that happens, and for those of you who are academics in the space, you've probably had the experience of submitting a paper to a journal, and then them asking you, okay, but why is the Eastern Cape important? I mean, like these things of having to constantly justify why your context is worth writing about or worth exploring or might actually have some ideas to offer. So our papers are from the Sahel and are from a specific context, in fact, Eastern Cape and Nairobi, I think. And for us, that's important. So inviting and allowing that to happen with the rigor that allows them to be standard papers. We get them up on Wits Wired Space. So if you go to last volume 1 papers, they're all up on Wits Wired Space, which is the repository where we disseminate theses and academic material of a certain standard. And then within a short time with the volume 1, it's going, well, not all of the papers, but those who fit a particular theme go into a book kind of format. We invite the authors to write their working papers in a format that easily can convert to publication. So several of the ones from volume 1 have already gone into other journals thereafter, which is great. What we are doing with this second volume is, who knows, there might be a book in there somewhere, but what we're definitely going to do is an AI special issue that we will edit coming out of this. So you might ask why the special issue after the working paper is already out. That's got to do with contributing to the knowledge base. So in academic terms, that's the kind of landing place you need to be, both for the academics to get their brownie points, but also for the to contribute to the knowledge base, to be sort of there and citable as having been part of what that discipline has sort of, in a peer-reviewed way, accepted as knowledge. I should say our working papers are peer-reviewed anyway. So it's not just the editors who see them. We do have quite a robust process of making sure there is peer review. But I think what we're also doing, like I said, is inviting a slightly different level of access to producing scholarship than just the traditional journals and books.
Yeah, and it's extremely exciting seeing where this is going to go next, whether it's the special issue, whether it's a huge new book project. We're having heart palpitations already. But it's really exciting times. And one of the points that was made, I said at the beginning, and Geshi's reiterated, it's really hard to do research in this space when, I'll say it over and over again, today is the worst that technology will ever be. That we'll wake up tomorrow and we'll change, but people will be writing, they will be researching, and we want to make sure that we're at the leading forefront of that work rather than just kind of taking on passively what other people give us at this point. So I want to say thank you, Geshi, for that, and for telling us more about the papers. If you want to see the papers, they are now already uploaded. They are on our university website on the Tayarisha webpage in particular. So if you want to find the working paper series, I would encourage you to go onto Google and type, or Google or Safari, whatever your search browser is, and just type in Tayarisha Vid School of Governance, and you'll see it. It's right on our splash page. You click on it, you'll see both the link to our Volume 1 papers, as well as the list of our Volume 2 papers, and they're easily accessible for you at any given moment in time. And I would also like to say we do have a lot more coming from this. So it's not just the launch. We're planning to have 2 more webinars out of this. We also have 6 podcast episodes where we go into a lot more detail about certain papers, really elaborate on it. So you'll have a lot of opportunity to engage in this material, not just from a paper format, reading on your laptop, but you can, if Stanley is going to put me on TikTok again, but you'll see our TikTok shorts on this as well at some point.
Are you dancing?
Go find out if I'm dancing or not. So we're trying to reach as many people as possible on different mediums. We're not trying to just be stuffy academics who just write and then no one sees what we write about. So I want to say thank you to Geshi for your time and all the work that you put into this. I will be asking to come back later, but I'll tell you more about that when we get there. Fantastic. So if we can get Zibu, if you can help me with these chairs, just 2 on the side. So I'm going to stand for this process. So as I said before, the worst thing you can do is kind of chat and you guys listen to us. For those who just entered the room, I did give the forewarning that this is going to be more of an interactive session than you would ordinarily expect. So please raise your hand if you've ever watched a Jubilee debate on YouTube before. It's one of those debates, you might have seen the format where people kind of stand in the background and then a question is asked and then people come to the front to have a conversation about that topic in particular. So today we're going to do that type of discussion. We really want to bring you into the group. A lot of the work we do around this topics involves technology that you utilize every day, and the assumptions that we make are assumptions about your behavior within the state, within the public sector, in your everyday lives. So I've got a series of questions here, and I would like to kind of welcome you to entertain me for a moment. I'll facilitate the conversation. You don't need to do a lot. I'll do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. But I want to firstly ask a very, very simple question. Has anyone, if you've ever had a horrible experience standing in a government line of some sort, whether that is Home Affairs, whether that is with your license, if you've ever had that experience before, can you please come up to the front?
That front.
Yeah, right here. We've got 4 chairs. Got 2. No one can tell me in this room that you've never had a bad experience at a government department. So someone is lying to yourself one way or another. It's good. We've got 2. Take a chair. Take a seat. Take a seat.
The full house.
Fantastic. And don't worry, there'll be a second round of these things, maybe even 30. So I want to give you the opportunity, just in 30 seconds. I'll ask you a follow-up question, just in 30 seconds. What was this experience that you had? And furthermore, do you think digital transformation or some sort of digital intervention would have made your life easier? And if so, what would that be?
Mine was a queuing at Home Affairs to get unabridged birth certificates for my kids because the ones I had were there's not the summary version. So I queued for like literally half the day and from midday to the end of the day. And just when I was the second to get to the point, and they told me that it's cut off from there. So I must come back tomorrow. So what the difference that this makes, that since they started this online system, I realized that they didn't been the case then where you do your online application or you choose to secure an appointment, it would really have served me better. And it's efficient, time saving, just the best they can do.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to have a follow-up to that.
Yeah, so my experience was at a public hospital where you all wake up to queue up for services. Everybody's there. The hospital opens at a particular time. The doctors are there at 10, but you were there at 7. Then from there, you go and queue at the pharmacy, which is going to take roughly about another 3 hours. So you wake up at 7, you leave the hospital. So yeah, that is the queuing process that I experienced. So probably a bit crazy, but all of that can be digitized. They can be booking systems. They can be, the doctors can know how many patients to expect in a day, so they can get the resources accordingly. Similarly to, you can integrate that system as well with the pharmacy system to say, once the patient is seen, the script is pushed to the pharmacy. So by the time they get to the pharmacy, they're prepped. So there's a lot of automation that can happen there that's not happening.
Yeah. So there's a general lack of automation within the States. And there's a general theme here, and I'm going to circle back to it because I want to pose a follow-up question to the group as a whole.
Righty, thank you. Sure. When you asked the question, first thing that came into my mind was an experience that it's a journey that I've been through my entire life. So let's say, for instance, from my childhood, I would get sick, so basically I would go to the nearest local clinic. So basically, I think everyone has an issue in terms of how the government system works. You can also see all government institutions in South Africa, as soon as you walk in, you can see with the type of chairs they have. I'm sorry about that. That gets to show you how much patients need. That being said, with the objective of this event today, I remember 3 years back, my team and I started a campaign called Smart Excellence. The aim was to digitize and modernize excellence. So reason being was to try minimize corruption, crime, and all these other incidents that have been in excellence. So this would have benefited someone who, let's take it for someone who's coming from the rural, who's never been in town. So as soon as you get to town, you have to, you rely on asking people what can I catch a taxi to certain destination. So our initiative was to, in our groups, was to get someone who will sponsor, get a machine, the one you normally see by the malls, where you can just type, punch in that I want to go to Netherlands, then shows you which sectional ranking to go to. So basically, that's just it. Government, everyone knows that. No one gets satisfied, but at the end of the day, it does work.
Yeah.
But yeah, the waiting and it's
The
frustrating.
waiting of things. And there's a way to stop the waiting, but there's consequences to this. And I want to see if someone picks it up. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Wow, I've got two examples, but I think I'll use one. Yeah, don't worry. It kind of adds on to what Mama was saying earlier. So I had a very similar situation with myself at home events, but the difference is the booking system was existing. It was implemented at this point in time. So I had booked to get my identity document replaced at Cresta. Everything was all good and dandy. I received my time. I'm told get there at 10, 9:55. I'm ready and waiting. So I'm in line now of people that are going to be there between 10 and 11, which for me is much better than waiting, the whole day. All good. I eventually get in. They tell us, no, unfortunately, the system's offline. We only have one computer working at this point in time. And that one computer that is working is going to take a good 2 hours to reboot and just get started all over again. So it kind of took away that innovative approach that they gave us with now giving us the booking system, simply because they're not maintaining the hardware and or the software. So that kind of really just took us all the way back to just waiting in line like normal. So yeah.
I get that. I get that.
Hello and greetings. So I have an experience. So the experience I have is I've worked for government in several different levels, and there's something I picked up when you were speaking about data governance and artificial intelligence. So to base my point, I'm going to start by saying that there's no protocol, SADC protocol on artificial intelligence or data governance, which means legally there's no ground for artificial intelligence and data governance. That's point number one. And because the SADC protocol on science, technology, and innovation is from 2007, that means all other forms of innovation in technology that have been proposed post 2007 are not really recognized. So I once came up with a proposal, and my proposal, I think I was in a meeting with someone from the United Nations, and I was explaining to them that you can't track disabled children in the system. It was a thought experiment I was trying to see. So then I proposed that, for example, when a child is born, they are born in the Department of Health. And then when they start school, it's Department of Education. When they get a job, Department of Labor. When someone dies, it's Department of Home Affairs. But there's no system integration within these government departments. But the most interesting thing is because of lack of governance structures, legal ground, when innovation happens within the data governance space in artificial intelligence, sometimes it happens in a silo. And because it happens in a silo, you might find scenarios where one person has asymmetry of information compared to the government or institutions. So what I realized was the biggest problem is that the data models and the artificial intelligence models that are known to the globe are maybe Eurocentric, Asianic, and maybe have an American node to it. But when you look at the African sphere of data governance, artificial intelligence, innovation, and blockchain technology, it's heterogeneous and there's no standard model that can best fit. And because of this, you find, I'm going to make an example.
You can be very brief. Because let me ask a follow-up, because I understand where you're going with that. And there's a current theme for all of you in one way or another. And I'm going to simplify it. Obviously, there's a bit of nuance. But if your life became easier because the university, if only the university could do it. If government was super efficient because they could process your data, they could store your data in a manner, they could pull on it to make informed decisions about you, whether that is your prescription medications, whether it is we've got this on file. Here's the abridged birth certificates. Right here, you don't actually have to physically go in. Requires the state to have a ton of data on you, right? A mountains of data on you. And the question I'd like to ask you and those in the room, and just by show of hand, then I want to get the next round of individuals, right? Put your hand up if you are more worried about government being competent with your data than you are about them being incompetent with your data. So I'll ask it again. Put your hand up if you're worried about government being really, really good about how it utilizes your data, right? Or there's two hands. Put your hand up if you have no worries about what government does with your data. So for those who are online, and please put up your hands in the chat as well when I ask these questions, I can see it as well. I mean, this is one of the debates that gets really pulled out in one of three of the papers about how much do we trust government, right? You could create these very, very efficient systems. What if government becomes too efficient at knowing who you are, where you are, how you behave? And within certain contexts, it could be perfectly fine. In other democratic or non-democratic contexts, it poses fundamental threats to individuals. So I want to say thank you to this first group. We're going to get the next group up at this point. So the next question I want to ask, and this is more for you to share your opinion. So for many of you, you would have seen that in South Africa, a couple of months ago, we tried to release, I'm trying to say this with a straight face, we tried to release a piece of legislation on AI, which lasted a grand total of 4 days in public before we found out that AI was used to generate that piece of legislation, which is very embarrassing, but it does kind of pose an interesting question. And I want people to come up to the front if we have a strong opinion on this question either way. And the question is very simple. Should African governments pause AI in public services until oversight exists, or is waiting the bigger risk? So I'll repeat the question. Should African governments pause AI in public services until there's some sort of oversight, or is it a bigger risk to just wait? If you have any opinions on that, come up to the front. Should we govern AI now, right? Or should we wait? Will I repeat? Also, as I say in my classes when I lecture, I have no shame in picking on individuals. So if I stand up, I'm going to end up, before the two gentlemen come up, because I've heard your voices already, I'd like to get a few new voices before we get to you. Any other volunteers? So 1, 2, ma'am, who just, you sniffed in my direction, unfortunately. I don't mind coming up. And at the back with the water bottle in front of you in the brown jacket. So one of the things is often when people freely give their opinion, they already have a preconceived idea of what this argument would be. They've practiced this before. Those who don't usually come up always give me fascinating answers more often than not. So should we, in very simple terms, should African governments have some sort of oversight over AI in public services, right? Or should they just wait and see where things go? So I want to start with you. We'll start with you at the end and come back around.
Thank you. So I'm a nerd, and I'm into like your digital assets, blockchain, quantum computing and stuff. So what I realized was there's a 2030 deadline for central bank digital currencies. There's digital IDs that are also on the deadline. And because they're on the deadline, SARS is already struggling to decide how are they going to tax crypto. Is it going to be capital gains tax, personal pays and tax? And here's the interesting part. Government is discussing that even digital ID, if you want to leave the country and you have crypto, you can't leave the country. So my main concern, maybe from a capitalistic perspective, is that if the southern hemisphere or the global south doesn't have a clear directive on central bank digital currencies, digital IDs, and how they are going to use our data, we will be in trouble because if the United Nations says this is the standard of how data is going to be processed and there's no structure or format of how data is processed specifically in SADC, then whatever happens at a higher level, we'll just face the consequences and
So you're saying they should be oversight or they shouldn't be oversight?
there should be oversights because without structure, it's just chaos.
Okay. Without structure, there's just chaos. Would you like to go next? You can shout at me later. Do you think government should have oversight over AI or should they not? Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So what is oversight in this question? And what is oversight over AI is a burning question across the world that is ill-defined. There's no one country, everyone tries to do it their own different ways. And what we're finding out is that across the globe, there are different regimes around this that are not just being enforced by governments, but are being enforced by private companies around this topic. But in this context, so oversight is, should there be some sort of rules or regulations around the use of AI? So should a government employee be able to use Claude or ChatGPT to skim through your personal data if you're applying for a SASA grant, for instance?
Hi, my name is Maggie. In all honesty, I think they should because I believe that I look at AI as an assistant to make people get. And since the government seems to be struggling to fulfill some of the things they promised, they might as well use AI to assist. And I feel like that will make lives of many people easy. Imagine maybe like this, maybe a data breach or something crazy, and then they have like AI to assist, AI to overlook a lot of data and be able to pinpoint like the information that's being looked for. So I feel like AI should, the government should. Yes, what you say in AI. And I feel like it's gonna be a great thing because they're gonna be like getting more assistance than just sitting and not doing anything and hoping that things will fix themselves. Whereas they can use AI to fasten the speed to fix things that they feel like they're not able to fix.
Yeah, so for you, it would make government better at its job.
Yes, and they can also like maybe implement rules and maybe like specific rules on how you can use AI the safer way. Because a lot of people don't really trust AI. They don't know if they're using AI, where's that information going, what's happening. So maybe there can be rules that can be applied to using AI, but also making sure that AI is being used the right way to fulfill whatever needs that are there and making everybody's life easier.
Yeah, I mean, the debate around the use of AI in the right way is a very normative question in the sense of who gets to determine what is right and what is not right. But I love that answer. I'm going to go to Stanley now and get your thoughts on this.
So Mine is very simple. I come from the tech sector. Our ethos is fail fast. And the same would apply to government. The faster you fail at AI, the quicker you learn and you know how to regulate. We tried to develop the national AI policy. We used AI, we failed. Recently, I saw something again came up. They tried to build something for Home Affairs. Again, they used AI, it hallucinated. So we are trying quick and we're failing quick. For me, that's good. We will learn quick and we'll know how to use this thing much better.
So less regulation, more people.
Yes, for innovation, I mean, the more red tape you put in front of innovation, the less there'll be. The more you say, okay, free rein, let's go, let's break this thing. The more people are more prone to try and innovate more. And the more they try to innovate more, the more solutions would come and the more progress.
Good day, everyone. I'm not really quite a speaker. Okay. In my view is this gentleman earlier on, he mentioned about when a child is asked and and when they go to school, that's a one communication. And when they get a job, it's a department of labor and when they graduate, right? So if you can look at it, the Department of Home Affairs is actually in between now. It's actually evolves in all, right? So now the challenge is when a child is born, right? Adding to what that lady said earlier on when she's talking about feelings of like the right? I think government can innovate AI. I don't know how you can structure it, but then we have policies. Because remember, right now you cannot put your personal data in AI, right? But if we can have a way whereby our data is actually secured within the AI, right? What I mean is she wasn't actually going to struggle to have to go and queue at the Home Affairs to get the certificate. Rather, this thing it should be started at the Department of Health. When the child is born, right, they record the mother's information and then when the child now is born, they record the information, right? So if they integrate all the department, they can be integrated. At the Home Affairs, they can be able to retrieve what actually happened or the initial details from the point the mother got into the hospital until the baby was born and throughout, throughout the child's growing up, because they have to do clinics and for immunizations and everything in there also, because what they do is a manual, giving a mental health book, if that get lost, you cannot apply for because it's documents, right? It's a hard copy. If those things that get lost, you cannot apply for another. It's going to be a challenge for you to apply because they cannot retrieve all the information from the mother being in the hospital until throughout the phase of the child going for a child going to primary. No. Through the people going to the clinics, the immunizations. That record is very, very important. Because some people now we go to the force it's the department of the way the gentleman mentioned. So I'm moving from here back to the Department of Home Affairs. Now, if something happens to a person now they are right, and this person have been, I heard, he also mentioned the concept of the disabilities. Right, that they cannot pull a record of how many disabled children are in South Africa, right? So now, they in the hospital, right? From birth, there was something wrong there from the moment. Now it affects because some things you grow with them undiagnosed, right? Or they misdiagnose you, the child, they misdiagnose the child there. And then now later on, if the child now dies, they cannot actually, because now running through this process of postmortems and where else it could be faster if they could go to the hospital and check actually the history of when the child was born and the mother and the family history. And so I think the government should actually is in a safe way.
Safe way. So, I mean, a lot of the points that were mentioned here, one of the papers within our working paper series talks around this idea of digital ID. Now, within the South African context, when we talk about digital IDs, there isn't like a big stigma about it. If you go to the UK and you bring up the conversation of a digital ID, you might get chased out the room, depending on where you are. Because the cultures are so different that within the UK, there's this abject fear of the state being able to track you in one way or another. But within the South African context, the state loses people all the time. In fact, we want to be tracked by the state for important things. I would like the states to know that when I started grade 1, you know what school I'm going to. That if I change the school, you can still follow me. When I matriculate, you can still follow me. Imagine you had a system that could track you from birth, where you're born, what conditions you had access to that information. I always joke with people that no one in this room owns their medical records. Because if I asked you, go bring me those medical records today now, you have to go to someone and ask them for permission for your own information, right? Imagine you had a digital ID that could track that information over time, that tracked your educational outcomes, that someone could then say, based off your current path, there has to be an individuated intervention for you and at the school. And then when you get to grade 10, the system already knows using very, very fancy algorithms, you should probably go to university because we think you're on this path. You show the potential, or here's a different path you could take. Now there's pros and cons with that as well, right? Because what if government then decides you don't want anyone to go to university anymore? Just all of you must go somewhere else, right? Or what if government then finds out your personal health details and they give you bad advice? What happens at that point? And South Africa is well known as a country that has given really bad medical advice in really dire moments of our history as well. So I want to say thank you to this round. You were great, and you'll shout at me later for bullying you to come up here. Yeah, sure.
No, I genuinely believe in AI so much. I just feel like we have to know how to use it the right way because I feel like we can accomplish a lot of things using AI.
I mean, I hope so, except our essays. Please don't use your essays. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So I am looking at the time and I'm wondering whether we have time for one last round here. And I want to ask a question that I often kind of pose during my lectures. And there's a fascinating argument within the country that, we should have digital inclusion. So if you believe there should be some form of digital inclusion in the country, please come up to the front. So everyone should have access to the internet. You should be able to have a computer. You should have a phone. There shouldn't be a digital divide, essentially.
Everybody at every age?
At every age. Got to. I can work with 2. I would like one more. There we are. Perfect. Okay. So we generally have a belief in there should be some form of digital inclusion. Now, I've done this exercise with you, you've heard this speech from me before, so you might have a cheat code. But there's a principle, I'm going to get awfully complicated here, but follow me. There's a very simple principle about equality of outcome or equality of process within government. And the basic notion of that is, should everyone go through the same process when they're dealing with the state? So we all stand in the exact same line. We all go through the exact same queue. Even if you're a multi-millionaire or you own nothing, in the eyes of government, everyone must go through the same process. Or is it more important that it doesn't matter what your process is, as long as the outcome is equal? Is that better? And why I ask that question is that our government has recently made a choice around equality of outcome, right? That if you want to have a passport, you can either go through your bank or you can go to Home Affairs. And the bank is a lot quicker than Home Affairs. Do you believe the government should make sure that that no one is left behind as we become more digitalized? Or is it okay to leave certain people behind, so long as you know, even if they do it paper-based, they can still get the ID at some point, even if it takes them standing in line for an entire day? Does that make sense? Yeah. Right, so should government not leave anyone behind? Everyone goes through the same steps, every single process, right? Or is it okay for government to leave certain people behind, so long as we know at the end of the day, you'll get this thing eventually? Should we start on that end?
It's a tricky one. But for me, it boils down to the outcome. I used to teach mathematics in the class. So when you have students, right? Some will answer a question within a minute. Some is 5 minutes, some is 10 minutes. We live in a country that's unequal, sad as it is. But then, if a person has means of getting a passport faster than the other, that person must get that passport, right? He must not suffer just because the other person cannot get it as fast as he or she can. I think that's where I stand.
No, it's a great answer. I like that answer.
All right, interesting answer. I am pretty much the polar opposite. I definitely think it's important, especially when we're going to look at entities like the government. It's important that everyone gets put through the same process. Because now you must remember that the private sector, I'll use FNB as an example. I use FNB, right? And I can go get my ID or my passport there done in a week or two, like it's super fast, right? But now the government is now allowed to relax and not update and fix and integrate their systems properly because there's someone else doing it for them. So I'm a firm believer that we make sure that everyone is on equal footing. That way now the government itself is now under pressure to say, yo, we need to make the system more efficient for everybody because we are the sole provider of this. When you outsource everything, you're going to relax and not actually improve on anything. Hence, we're still waiting in lines at Home Affairs the same way we did in the 90s. Had we put that pressure on government to say, no, you're not going to privatize the way in which we get our documents, I promise you we'd be so much more efficient. But that's just my 2 cents.
I think about another example, because has anyone gone to OR Tambo International Airport before? Just raise your hand if you have. And who here banks with Discovery? I'm not sure. You know, there are certain, when you get to security checkouts, there's Discovery people, and then there's the rest of us. You see, the outcome is the same. You're still going to get through security, but that process and that experience is fundamentally different. And that's in a small scale. So this question of like everyone should go through the same process, should it be that everyone goes through the long line because we know we can achieve that? Or should we accept that, you know, certain people can take that other route? But what are the consequences of that? There's that. Go ahead.
Yes, for me, really, it really, all the outcome matters. And there's a way of considering looking in equity. And to answer this shortly, my study is about it at the moment. And the reason why I chose the framework that I'm using, which is just transition, is because it's a look at the distributive justice, the cognitive justice, and the procedural justice. Look at all those. So when technology is introduced, there'll be laggards. And there are those that are so quick to grasp. And there are those that may wish to grasp, but they don't have the means. So when you look at it from all these angles, at the end of it will win. I think if you look at where we are today in terms of banking, I remember when we moved from checkbooks to cards, how people felt their money would be lost and everything. It was so scary. But I think the focus was on the outcome. Banks knew that over time, they will face certain things out. And we got to a point when if you wanted to be attended physically, they'll be charged. And those who were paying such charges eventually migrated. We embraced the change. So for me, it's possible to focus on the outcome and make it possible for everyone.
Now, as you're speaking, you gave me an idea for a paper, Geshi, that maybe we should work on.
Still right, yeah.
Redistributive justice and procedural justice in the development of AI governance. I'm kind of thinking about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's some comments online. Yes. So I'm looking at the comments online. We have a former colleague of ours, Professor Darlene Miller. I assume this is Darlene Miller, yeah. Professor Darlene Miller, given the corruption levels in government, they will sell our data. That's, you laugh, but it's a huge consideration around the price level of data. Within South Africa, we've got very stringent laws around data protection in particular. I mean, copy-pasted laws, but still stringent laws around it. But we do play fast and loose with our data. And I also want you to be aware that when we talk about data here, it's not just what's on your laptop, but it's actually the physical copy or copies of your ID that you give to the state, and when they magically become lost. When people have identity theft, these things do take place. And then we have Law Manunyane. Oh, I can't see from this angle. The governance of AI is a priority. There's a lot of personal data within government. Without governance, the AI world will utilize information irresponsibly, if not monetizing it. And we're seeing that every day. We're seeing both the use cases and the good and bad of this. Perfect. Thanks so much. Around the monetization of data, but that might be a conversation for another day. We have a comment from Nucha Lubice. We can't continue to wait when others are advancing with service provisions for their citizens. There are countries on this continent whose what we call data exchange systems, so how we pass information from the Department of Health to the Department of Education, that far outstrip ours by a country mile. The keystone one on our continent, and it deserves even more studies, the Rembo system in Rwanda, that functions as a very powerful data exchange system, not compared to Estonia just as yet, which is probably the gold standard, but definitely dwarfs ours. And your phone has gone dead on me. But and then we've got the last one from Janina Costa. But AI doesn't have to be proprietary. Wouldn't it be safe if AI tools that scale our data were built and governed in-house? Sovereignty. And as you'll see, and we'll kind of end off on that, throughout the papers, the question around sovereignty keeps coming up in multiple different ways. This question around data localization. Should our data be stored in data centers in South Africa? We had the manager, public sector manager of Google speaking within our center a couple of weeks ago. And I've heard him say this multiple times, whether it's Google, whether it's Amazon, where they look at government and say, don't store your data, store it with us. It doesn't matter where your data is stored, we will protect it better. And sometimes they can protect it better than the state, if not more often than not. But what are the consequences of it? We're also seeing an instance in Europe in particular where I believe it is Belgium or the Netherlands. The Netherlands just passed a recent law that essentially stops certain American companies bidding for government contracts in the Netherlands. And the basic idea behind it is that the United States passed a law about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, very sneaky law that essentially said any American company that's doing any sort of work, if it needs us to do it, we will take the data that is there, whether you like it or not. And what they found out is that these American companies are working across the globe. And the Netherlands woke up one day and found out that if the United States wanted to access our citizens' data through this American company, that American company would be compelled to do it. And in the past, you would have pieces of legislation like this, but it was neither here nor there. It was neither here nor there because you never thought you would have a state that would be willing to do it. But as our geopolitics has changed, we're now realizing that states are very much willing to pull that kill switch if they need to. So this has been fun. It's the first time I've done a fishbowl discussion. I'm going to give all the credit here to Geshi, who thought this up, and I think it worked. And I'm really, really grateful for everyone who attended today. I do want us to do a quick vote of thanks, but I want to take this opportunity, especially for those who are online, to do something that I hope works out. So as I said, I have recently taken the task of trying to fill very, 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 very big shoes of Professor Geshi Sabina Karuri. She is, at this point, moved from the director of Tayarisha and has moved to the Southern Center for Inequality Studies, where she remains a superstar academic. If you want to be inspired by someone's work and be inspired by how someone can get, I don't know when you sleep at any particular moment, but we would just wanted to have this opportunity to say a big thank you to Geshi for her entire time at Tayarisha, for getting us to this point. If it wasn't for you, it would still be people talking about digital governance over coffee rather than a leading voice within the university and the work we were doing. So I'd like to give her a round of applause for those who are in the room. So that brings us to the end of our program today. It has been really, really fantastic engaging with you all. We're trying to find new innovative ways of engaging. For those of you who are students at WITS, whether you're in the business school, the School of Governance, we have created a dedicated what we call student cohorts within Tayarisha. It's a concentrated grouping of masters and PhD students, and we're really here to help you in your research journey, whether it's about proposal development, brainstorming ideas, having one-on-one discussions about the research that you're doing, connecting you with different resources. We're trying to create a student hub of researchers who are doing work on emerging tech in different ways. So please sign up for that. If you want to be interested, please talk to Zibusiso and he'll take your information. We meet up twice a month. Every now and again, we'll give you pizza and you can discuss amongst yourselves. And then once a month as well, we also have a formalized session in which we engage with you, helping you with your research journey, brainstorming your ideas. So please sign up to the Tayarisha student cohort. It is open to all students, not just those within the WITS School of Governance. We will also be having a series of events to follow this. So please be on the lookout on our social media channels, on WSG and Tayarisha websites. We'll be having multiple webinars based off this working paper series. As you might have noticed, not the authors weren't here today, but we'll have the authors there for the webinars that will be running out. I want to remind you again, we have a podcast series. The first episode went live on YouTube today, so we'll share the link with everyone. You'll find it on our website as well if you want to hear more in-depth commentary from all the editors around the different chapters, the different working papers. And then lastly, we have a series of policy dialogues lined up as a center. So please be on the lookout. We're going to be talking all things from bringing one of the world's leading experts on quantum computing and how you monetize it, who started off as a student and is now a leading researcher in the space. We're doing policy dialogues around digital public infrastructure and where that research agenda is going in South Africa. We'll be doing policy dialogues around the geopolitics of data usage towards the end of December. So we've got end of August. We've got a series of different dialogues, different opportunities for you to engage with us. So please, please, please get involved when you can. Finally, I would like to give a huge set of thank yous to all the partners who were involved from the, and guess you will have to help me here, from the IDRC for AI4D, the Foreign Office, the FCDO in Canada. I would like to say in the UK, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Zibusiso for all the work that he's been doing in the background. We also have Amy in the background, who without Amy, she's online. Without Amy, I don't think this working paper series would have functioned. She sent me many, many emails badgering me to get my reviews in. And so it's really thank you to her. I'd also like to say thank you to the comms and marketing team within WSG who've helped us out with this event, as well as the Angle podcast and the team of Earl and Stanley for all the media and comms assistance they've also given us over time. And most importantly, more than anything else, I want to say thank you for all of you who attended here in person and all of you who attended online. We deeply appreciate your support. We're going to be doing more of these as time goes on, more engaging. If you ever want to just do research with us, if you want to get published with us, we can help you out. Come on through. We have an open door policy. I mean, have a student card, but an open door policy in general. But more than anything else, thank you to all of you who came today. There are refreshments at the back if you need them. And once again, thank you and travel safe. Wow.